Welcome to That's Based. Happy Wednesday. I'm your host, as always, Caleb Salvatore, reporting from somewhere underground. We're laughing our way through the end of days. Brought to you by Outlaw Streamers and our friends at Blood of Tyrants Wines, which I may or may not be drinking right now. Shut up. It's Tuesday night. It's pre-taped. I'm not drinking wine at 9 o'clock in the morning. Calm down. But Blood of Tyrants Wine, if you use the promo code BASED, B-A-S-E-D, at the like the title of the show, at the checkout, you'll save 10% off your order. At the checkout, drinkbloodofTyrants.com with the promo code BASED, B-A-S-E-D, like the title of the show, you will save 10% off your order at the checkout on either the red wine, the white wine, or the Liquid Freedom energy drink. One more time, that's drinkbloodofTyrants.com with the promo code BASED, B-A-S-E-D, like the title of the show. You'll save 10% off your order at the checkout on some great products, including the red Blood of Tyrants wine, like you see right here. Come on, you know you want to do it. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, we've got some news out of New York City. It's not over, per se, but it's not looking good. Andrew Cuomo, this is how bad this Zoran Mamdani, and I have no idea if I pronounced his name right. Check that. It's not New York City. It's New Yorkistan now. But this is how bad this guy is. I openly endorsed Andrew fucking Cuomo, the former governor of New York. You remember Andrew Cuomo, the granny slayer, who placed COVID-positive patients into nursing homes to thin out the populations. The guy who was accused of groping multiple women and making inappropriate comments to them, and then went on the record as his PR move and said, and I quote, "I'm not perverted, I'm just Italian," end quote. That Andrew Cuomo, I publicly endorsed that guy because the lunatic that was supposed to, or that he was running against in the Democrat primary, and the Democrat primary in New York City is like the Republican primary in Nebraska. You win that, you're probably going to get through. That's who he was running against. He was running against this guy, Zoran Mamdani, who will presumably be the first Muslim mayor of New York City. He is an open communist that wants to defund the police, he was a member of the anti-Tesla riots, attempted to assault police officers while protesting deportation, and then to top it all off, wants to spend $65 million in taxpayer money to fund transgender treatments for children. This guy is the caricature of every left-wing lunatic that your Fox News watching 350-pound great uncle believes in, with all the bumper stickers all over his car. This guy's a maniac, and he won. And that shows just how far New Yorkistan has gone. Now, what's interesting is this guy, if you look at the exit polls, Andrew Cuomo dog-walked him with black voters and with Hispanic voters. But Mamdani won overwhelmingly with white voters, which proves what I'm saying is that white liberals are hell-bent on driving this country into the ground. This guy's from Uganda. So they elected a foreign Muslim open communist to be their mayor. Good luck, New Yorkistan. Bona fortuna. I mean, obviously the policies I just talked to you about were insane enough. And you know what? There's people that'll freak out when they watch this and they'll go, "Oh, you're a racist, you're xenophobic, you're an Islamophobe, you're blah, 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 blah." You know what? Like I've said a million times, I am whatever you guys say I am. If you want to accuse me of being that, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to argue about anything. There's like 10 people on this planet whose opinions matter to me. And I know my character, and I know what I believe in. But here's what I'll tell you. It makes me a tad bit uncomfortable, and I think it should make you a tad bit uncomfortable, that the largest city in the country is about to, assuming he beats Eric Adams in the general, which is probably going to be a cakewalk. But it makes me a tad bit uncomfortable knowing that the largest city in the country, New Yorkistan, is now about to be run by a guy who's a member of a religion that says that we, the infidels, the non-believers, have three options. We can join, we can become slaves, or we can die. Now, I know people will say, oh, he's not a radical Muslim. He's a progressive Muslim. Obviously, take this trans kid shit over to Palestine and see what they do to you there. Obviously, he's a quote-unquote progressive Muslim. But there's another progressive Muslim over in London, goes by the name of Sadiq Khan, that's the mayor. And he's been the mayor of that city for a long time as the Muslim population has continued to blow up over there. No pun intended. That was, I did not mean to say that. That was a racist. It wasn't even a racist joke. It just came out. But Sadiq Khan is the mayor over there, and he's a so-called moderate or progressive or whatever you will Muslim. And as we've seen, immigration and the refugee crisis over there, so-called quote-unquote refugees, has absolutely exploded. Not a joke. I was not trying to make a pun right there.
Not a joke.
I promise. But even Sadiq Khan, being a so-called moderate Muslim, quote unquote, you're still seeing all of what people warn you about with Muslim immigration overflowing these countries go on in London. We've already covered the grooming and rape gangs extensively. You've got basically open Sharia law throughout different parts of London. If you have a problem with it, if you criticize Islam, if you make jokes about it, the police will come and arrest you. If you report a Muslim rapist, they'll ignore you or they'll charge you with a hate crime. If you defend yourself in any way, shape, or form against someone who's of Muslim descent, you get in trouble. This is what it leads to. Because what you have to realize, the difference between Muslims versus Christians and Jews. Now, here I go. A week removed from being called an anti-Semite, I'm about to defend the Jews, of course. But the difference between Muslims versus Christians and Jews is Christians and Jews are able to separate their church, or their faith, from the duties of their job. That doesn't mean that their faith isn't important to them, but if you're let's say a Christian police detective and a member of the clergy is accused of doing some not so good things to children, you're not taught to overlook that in church, whereas the Muslims are. That's the big difference there, is there is somewhat of a separation of your duties from your faith in that emotional sense right there. There's no guarantee. In fact, you could argue quite the opposite, that Zoran Mamdani is not going to favor Muslims. That making sure that looking out for what's good for New York City won't take a back seat to advancing the cause of Islam. This guy isn't a casual. He's put it at the forefront. He's on the record saying it's time the Muslims take over City Hall. So yes, I am a little bit concerned about that. When I see what this leads to, this is the crack in the foundation that leads to the whole house caving in. It's not like we don't have precedent for it in Europe. I always tell you, they do a trial run with this shit in Europe before they try it here. It always spreads here last. We're always the last bastion fighting against it, and then Europe realizes what a mistake they made. They correct course, and then we're about 10 years behind in that respect as well. It's the same thing with the trans kid crap. So we'll figure it out sooner rather than later, but it's a bad sign when you've got people like Tommy Robinson going on the air saying, hey, America, you think you got it bad with Latino illegal immigration right now. We wish we were having Hispanics sneak across our border right now. We wish that was all that was going on. Believe me, you're going to be begging for the drug cartels to come back when you deal with the Muslims overpopulating your cities. Because here's the thing. You can say whatever you want about the average illegal immigrant from Mexico or El Salvador or wherever the case may be. The reality is the average guy that sneaks over here from Mexico is not coming over here to do you harm. On purpose or incidentally, right? The average guy that comes across the border from Mexico, he may indirectly do harm, but he's not coming over here with the purpose of oppressing you. He's going to go get a job in a meat packing plant. He's going to live with 4 or 5 relatives, probably 2 or 3 generations of people in the house with him. He's going to send money back home. They're going to work and they're going to do their thing, right? They may hit your car and not have insurance, and that'll create a little bit of a pickle for you. But they're not going to come over here and actively seek to oppress you. Islam's a whole different story. When Muslims move into a country, it is in their doctrine that they do not assimilate. They make everyone else assimilate to their way of life. Whereas the Hispanic guy may not assimilate, but he's not going to try to make everybody live under his lifestyle for the most part. So we've got people. I have a friend from England. I was texting him the other day. He said, let me pull up the message, what he sent me. Because we were talking about this. He moved out of London because of how it had become overrun with Islamic refugees, or quote-unquote refugees, Islamic extremists. He moved out of London to the United States years ago because he saw the writing on the wall. Here's what he said. I keep telling people, if you want to know what America is going to look like in 10 years, take a look at England now. This is a guy who's from England, lived there, saw this, moved away because he saw the writing on the wall as far as what was coming. When the biggest city of your country becomes taken over by a Muslim, it's usually a sign of things to come. It's not a sign that you're curbing this issue. And nobody wants to talk about it. There's a great interview with Tommy Robinson on PBD, Patrick Bet-David's podcast. Everyone needs to listen to it because it's our future. I don't know what the solution is. I don't want to tell people they can't practice their faith in the United States. I don't want to openly discriminate against people of a particular faith coming into the country. But the reality of the situation is Islam is not compatible with Western values. And if we want to keep our culture, we have to face the reality as to whether or not we're going to let a culture in that openly says it wants to wipe ours out. That's all there is to it. If you look at people like I said, immigrants from Mexico, from Central and South America, Catholics and Christians that come over from Africa, people that come from Asia, those people don't come here with the intent of changing culture. They come here, absolute worst case scenario, to mind their own business, practice their own culture at home, and be a big nothing burger in society. Best case scenario, they want to assimilate. They love what we have going on here, and they want to become a part of it, and we should absolutely welcome those people with open arms. The problem is there is one particular culture on this planet that doesn't allow its members to do that. And that particular culture just rose to the highest level of power in the largest city in the country. I mean, we've played the videos on here before. They come on here and the Muslim clerics, they'll go on the air and they'll talk about how, yes, Muhammad married a 5-year-old, but guys, yes, Muhammad married a 5-year-old, but he waited until she was 9 to have sex with her. What more could you possibly want? I mean, they come on here and they argue that as if it were somehow acceptable. It doesn't process in their brains why it's bad to fuck a 9-year-old. Muhammad is their Christ-like figure, right? He's their prophet. Let me ask you guys, is there anything Jesus Christ did that you wouldn't do? Is there anything you look at what Jesus did that if you had the ability to do it, you wouldn't do it? Of course not. So why do we think that they're any different? I mean, child brides and rape gangs, that's a real problem with that part of the world. And it's not getting any better. And when we allow it in here, I mean, we have to have a real come to Jesus moment. We've got to sit down and we've got to have a national conversation about how long are we going to let this go on for. Because the more of them we let into the country, the worse it's going to be. And I don't think it should be illegal for anyone to practice their faith here. But as I've said before, I'm a firm believer that your right to practice your faith or do anything under the Constitution stops right where you begin to infringe on somebody else's rights. I know we have retards in the comments that disagree with that and think you can just do whatever the hell you want. And, you can assemble outside of somebody's house and trap them in it and harass them. But that's because it's supposedly protected by the First Amendment. But no, I'm a firm believer that your right to be a Muslim, while that's protected under the First Amendment, it stops right when you want to throw a gay guy off of a roof. Because then you're beginning to infringe on the rights of other people. So we got to be careful. I mean, we had just last week, we had a 22-year-old British man was arrested after attempting to marry a 9-year-old girl at a Disneyland park in Paris. This is all Europe that's getting overrun. It's not specific to England. England's the worst example. So this is a $150,000 event. They had hired actors as guests. The mother of the 9-year-old was arrested. So you had a theme park in Paris where enough people saw this and went, yeah, that's okay. We'll go along with that. A 22-year-old man marrying a 9-year-old girl. I mean, in the United States, you'd be beat to death for that if the police even got to you. They'd be pulling what was left of you off of the pavement if you tried to do that here. But you had enough people in England, someone greenlit this at a theme park, supposedly. You had people that decided to take money to be hired actors for this, to watch a 22-year-old man marry a 9-year-old girl. Muslim, by the way, in case you were wondering. So when I say it's not compatible with Western values, this is what I'm talking about, because this is the norm in countries like this. Women not being allowed to read is the norm in countries like this. So we got some soul searching we got to do here. You think Donald Trump's a fascist? Oh, sweetheart. Honey, just wait. This guy also says that he wants to have state-run grocery stores that don't have to pay any taxes. And so basically he wants to run out all the small mom and pop bodegas out of business, first and foremost. What a novel idea. State-run grocery stores. Grocery stores are operating at like a 1% profit margin, but never mind that. State-run grocery stores where they keep the prices artificially low. If only they'd tried that somewhere, so maybe we could see if there was like a track record. Oh, they have. They tried it in San Francisco. It failed. They brushed it under the rug. They tried it in a couple countries, very, very successful countries. Countries like the Soviet Union. Say, where are they? Where's the Soviet Union? Countries like North Korea was another example of where they tried the state-run grocery stores. Massive success over there, North Korea. Or they did it in Venezuela. Venezuela's still a country. They're still doing okay, right? Their state-run grocery stores in Venezuela are doing so well that people are hunting stray dogs in the streets. Government monopolizing food. Never gone wrong before. What could possibly go wrong here? Good luck, New Yorkistan. Have fun. I don't feel bad for you idiots because you voted for this shit. You brought me out in support of Meatball Andrew Cuomo. You elect a piece of shit, it's going to stink. Just be ready for it. Okay, we'll do one more here and then we'll get out of here. Iran. Let's talk Iran. Well, what's going on with Iran? I don't even know. It's been a lot's happened with Iran since we last talked on Saturday about this whole thing. And I think what Donald Trump's starting to find out is that this is too volatile of a part of the world for you to try to negotiate with. It doesn't work. And that's both sides of this, both Iran and Israel. Now, here was my concern when Donald Trump carried out these bombing operations late Saturday night. My concern was that Iran was going to fire back on U.S. assets in the Middle East, kill some Americans, and we were going to have no choice but to go in there and turn that country to glass. And if you know anything about American foreign policy, it never stops with turning that country to glass. I don't know many people that would have a problem with just turning Iran to glass. The problem is we decide we want a nation build. And we believe that our way of life, what works for us over here, works for that country over there. And let me tell you, this is going to be a common theme in this episode today. What works in the United States, the democratic republic we have over here, does not work in the Middle East. We found that out in Iraq. We found that out in Syria. We found it out in Libya. If we try to, we'll find it out in Iran. And the reason it doesn't work, and this is the quiet part that nobody wants to say out loud, everyone's afraid to admit it, but they all know it's the fucking truth. The reason it doesn't work, the reason people having the autonomy to elect their leaders doesn't work is because time and time again, we give people in that part of the world the ability to elect their leaders. And time again, those parts of the world fall to radical Islam. Radical Islam makes your country incompatible with democracy. That's tough for people to hear. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Shah was a good guy. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Assad was a good guy or Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein. But what we have found out time and time again in that part of the world is that you need a guy who's maybe not all that good of a guy because he keeps the worst guys at bay. It's like I've said, I mean, this is an extreme version of it, but, you know, when the wolf's at the door, people tend to go toward that far right, so-called fascist wing of their political spectrum in their country because that's who they feel like can protect them. And what we find out time and time again is that it takes a bad man to keep bad people at bay. It's a thankless job. That guy's going to have a lot to answer to when it's all said and done. But that's the stabilizing force that's needed in that region, not the ability to vote. It doesn't work. So Trump goes and bombs these nuclear facilities. Iran and Israel agree to a ceasefire. Israel, like 5 minutes before the ceasefire, goes and drops a payload of bombs all over Iran. And then it goes, all right, ceasefire's on. We're good. It's like punching a guy right before the bell rings. You know what I mean? Well, cheap shot there. Not illegal, but kind of a cheap shot. Like, what are you doing? The next morning, yesterday morning, a lone rocket gets fired from Iran, lands somewhere in the desert outside of Israel. Israel freaks out, goes and orders a bombing campaign on Iran. Donald Trump at this point is on television, no tie on, dropping the F-bomb. You can go watch it. He says they don't know what the fuck they're doing, both of them. And, I mean, at this point, you feel bad for Trump because Trump at this point is the parent with the two kids in the back of the car fighting and screaming and crying, and he hit me, wah! And I think at this point, if you're Donald Trump, you need to, instead of turning around and yelling at your kids to shut up again, instead of giving them both toys, hoping that'll keep them occupied, instead of trying to talk them both off the edge, I think at the next stoplight, what you do is you pull your phone out, you hop on Google, and you find out what your state's safe haven laws are. And you find either the nearest hospital or fire department, and you drop both the kids off at it, and you never see them again. I think that's what you have to do. Because, look, Iran, they are what they are. They're lunatics. They're radical Islamist nutcases. We've come to expect this from them. You can't, I don't know why we trust either side in a ceasefire. Israel's violated hundreds of ceasefires throughout history. Israel's where my problem is right now. Because Israel is who we're trying to help in this, supposedly. Israel needs to know who the boss is. You're doing this, if you want to bomb these guys and violate ceasefires, go off. But you don't get to do it on our dime, especially when we're working round the clock, putting shit that can help Americans on the back burner here, like the tax cut, that we've got a ticking time bomb to get approved by the end of the year. Otherwise, Americans are going to see the biggest tax increase in the history of the country if we don't get it passed by December 31st. We're putting shit on the back burner that'll help the people who elected you to help this fucking shithole called Israel. Sorry, that's what it is. At this point, that's how I see him. The least they could do is listen to the guy that's signing the checks. That's the least they could do. But they can't even do that. So doesn't it bother you a little bit, even if you're the most staunch Israel supporter, doesn't it bother you that the president of the United States, who's funding like 98% of their military operations over there, calls up the prime minister of Israel and says, hey, I think this was a mistake if they even shot it to begin with. Nobody died. Nothing got destroyed. Please don't go drop the bomb. And the prime minister of Israel goes, nah, we're good, and hangs up the phone. Even if you're the most staunch supporter of Israel, if that doesn't piss you off a little bit, you should fucking move to Israel. Because you're not America first. Your priorities do not lie with this country. If you have no problem with the prime minister of Israel telling the guy that's signing the checks that's single-handedly keeping him alive to go fuck himself and violating a ceasefire. By the way, don't you find it a little funny that Iran has claimed every single bombing operation they've ever carried out on Israel except this one? This one that violated the supposedly violated the ceasefire. Iran's like, hold on, we didn't do that. If there's one thing we know about Islamic terrorists, they claim everything they do. Don't you find that a little odd? I think what Netanyahu and these ghouls are going to find out is Trump's the wrong president to play. I think a lot of people in Israel lied to him, and I think a lot of people in the U.S. intelligence community lied to him. And now he's mad. Now he feels like he's been slighted. And what he needs to do is some tough love. You want to go out? You want to do your own thing? Cool. Not another cent. You're done. Have fun paying for it yourself. We're not going to be here to save the day anymore. We're pulling all of our interests out. All of the funding, gone tomorrow. Do you want to do your own thing? Go ahead. And if they think you're bluffing, cool. Let them call the bluff. We're done. We'll give you money. We'll give you support. We don't want to see you fall. But some things got to start changing around here. Something's got to change. If you're going to do, if we're going to do this, we cannot continue to allow you to just go rogue like this because you drag us into it every fucking time. Now they're saying the bombs didn't even collapse the Iranian nuclear facilities. From New York Times, AP, and CNN are all reporting that. I don't know what to believe anymore. I think, no, I don't think. I know that there are different parts of our government that are a constant tug of war, and they're fighting back and forth on this, and one's trying to undermine the other and vice versa. That I know, just based off just obvious shit that we can see here. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know what's true at all anymore about the Middle East. There's so much intentional misinformation. We've seen a ton of quote-unquote leaks already. They're saying they moved their enriched uranium before the strikes. They had additional facilities. There's a lot of fake leaks. There's a lot of reporters getting played by both sides of this. I wouldn't believe anything I heard because the Trump administration denies that. I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know what to believe. I don't know who's telling us the truth on this. What I do know is we've got a country whose bills we're paying that's doing whatever the fuck it wants and is by extension dragging us into all of it. I don't believe that Iran fired that missile. I'll be straight up with you. It wouldn't be the first time that Israel's committed a false flag, specifically with the intention of getting the United States involved. Look up the Lavon affair. The Israeli military orchestrated bombings of American, British, and Egyptian civilian targets in Egypt, aiming to make it appear as though local nationalists and the Muslim Brotherhood were responsible to bring the U.S. and England into a war with Egypt. That happened. That's proven. You can also look up the USS Liberty during the Six-Day War, where we had a U.S. ship, the USS Liberty, which was running surveillance on Israel. Israel all of a sudden saw the ship out in the sea and commenced a bombing operation on it. Now, they claim that it was a mistake. They didn't know it was our ship. I don't know how they didn't know it was our ship, because everyone that survived that was on the ship said we had a giant American flag on it. We were waving a white flag saying, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. And the attack went on for 3 hours. So Israel ball washers, please explain that one to me. There have been a ton of other examples as well. You can look these up for yourself. ChatGPT, Google, these are great references. This wouldn't be the first time Israel had lied to try to either drag the U.S. into a war or justify it on their own. We can only go off what people show they are. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Also, okay, so if Iran really moved the enriched uranium before the strikes, you want my honest opinion on this? I think this is coming from Israel. I think that this quote unquote leak from the Pentagon, which it's not, but I think this Pentagon leak is coming from Israel. I think their goal here is to manipulate Trump into going, oh shit, we didn't get it. We got to go into war and get these guys out of here. Remember, it was Israeli intelligence that told us Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. I think Israel's trying to trick the United States here. I think they're trying to get him to go, oh crap, we didn't get everything. We got to do either more bombing or we need boots on the ground. And they're trying to drag us into war. That's the only thing that makes sense here. I think they leaked this to CNN. Because, well, let's think about this. If we didn't get it, if we really didn't get the nuke sites, this information came from the Mossad. And all we hear about is when the people that defend our involvement to the degree we are with Israel is that the Mossad gives us all this great intelligence gathering information over in the Middle East. How did they get this wrong? How did they get this wrong? How did they not see the October 7th attacks coming? How do you have a bunch of retards on hang gliders that fly into an EDM festival in the desert, and the Mossad, supposedly the greatest intelligence operation in the planet, had no idea it was coming? Can anyone tell me that? I think what we have here is we have an established track record with Netanyahu. We have an established track record of Israeli intelligence failing at key moments. Now we have to ask why. We always got to find the why to the what, right? Why are they failing at these key moments? Well, let's look at October 7th. What did that give them an excuse to do? You had this guy, Bibi Netanyahu, who was probably going to lose his reelection. The polls were showing he was going to get swept. It's the same thing as a president here in the United States. It is very hard for a wartime prime minister, specifically in Israel, to lose his reelection bid. He needed a war. Allowing the October 7th attacks to happen, letting their guard lapse for a couple of hours, not even having anybody out there in what was clearly a hot, soft target for Hamas, that seems a little too convenient to me. Almost like they were looking for an excuse to go into war. That's not just Israel. I'm a firm believer that FDR knew that Pearl Harbor was coming and didn't strengthen the harbor because his economic policies were failing and he needed a wartime economy to save his presidency. Leaders have done that throughout history. There's a lot of evidence that points that maybe George W. or maybe the Bush administration knew 9/11 was coming, and maybe they didn't let it happen, but maybe there was a little bit more they could have done to prevent it. Now we've got, if you believe all the reports coming out now, all this uranium that we were told was there had been moved weeks ago. Don't you think that the greatest intelligence operation on planet Earth would know that? Don't you think that the folks that could tunnel into a country as paranoid and militaristic as Iran and for months set up top secret drone bases to carry out strikes from within the country, don't you think that they would have known that uranium got moved weeks ago? Because Iran's coming out saying, hey, our nuclear program, this is no problem. We'll be back up in a couple of weeks. That doesn't sound like someone whose nuke sites got destroyed to me. If we're going to believe this. It seems to me like Netanyahu's intelligence is failing at critical times which will justify military actions on his end and attempt to reel the United States into foreign conflicts on his behalf. Y'all do what you want with that. That's my theory. I'm just sick of it, man. I'm sick of this country that is the size of fucking Delaware playing us like a fiddle. I'm sick of Americans taking a back seat to a country that would not piss on us if we were on fire. Quick little research project for you. Google how many Israeli soldiers died in the Iraq War. Go find out. If you Google how many people did Tim Tebow have sex with before marriage, you'll get the same answer. Would not piss on us if we were on fire. Just like most of Europe. It ain't no different. If the U.S. fell off the face of the earth tomorrow, most of Europe and Israel wouldn't care. There'd be no International Day of Mourning. It would just be, oh shit, where does the money come from now? That is all we are good for to all of these countries, is an ATM machine. It's time to stop. Like I said, we've got 5 months to get this big, beautiful bill passed. 5 months to get this done. Otherwise, every single one of you listening to this will see the biggest tax increase, the single largest tax hike in the history of this country if this bill doesn't get passed. And they couldn't care less. Every one of them, every last one of them in Congress has pushed you to the side and gone, oh, Israel needs money? How much? How much help do you need? Fuck our constituents that put us into office to keep their taxes low. Fuck the fact that like 2/3 of the people that voted for us voted for us because we were going to cut their taxes and not start any new wars. Let's go back on both of those promises now. Let's prioritize another country and in the process, jack everybody's taxes up by default. Fuck all that. Israel needs our help. You guys are retarded.
I notice your kids both look retarded.
Maybe I've been drinking a little too much tonight. Oh, God damn, dude. Makes me sick. We're getting regime change everywhere but here. It's more of the same shit, no matter what we do. And I don't think Donald Trump is going into office with this intention. I think Netanyahu and I think people in the American intelligence agencies are playing him like a fiddle right now. I think there's this never-ending tug of war within our government. I think there is an element of our government that has existed since the early 1900s in the intelligence community and the military-industrial complex. That it's always been there. It started to really gain some traction in the Cold War. And then into the Bush administration is when it took off. That's why we say, no matter who you vote for, you get George Bush. Here's what people don't realize. You go back and look at George W. Bush when he campaigned for president in 2000. His tone on foreign policy was, and I've studied this extensively, was very, very similar to Donald Trump's. Hey, we've had a long period of time. We just gotten out of the Cold War less than a decade ago, officially. We'd had a long period of time with foreign tensions and nation-building projects and intervention and funding this and that conflict and getting involved. Enough is enough. Well, let's focus on here. Let's rebuild America, right? And Bush gets into office. And a year goes by, and then 9/11 happens. And that changes everything. And now, all of a sudden, Bush is looking to Dick Cheney, who's never seen a war he doesn't like. What do I do next? And it was the right decision to go after bin Laden. You can't let somebody hit you like that and not hit him back. I'm not going to contest that. The problem is what happened after that is George Bush did not want to go into Iraq in 2003, which is one of the biggest mistakes in the history of this country. He didn't want to do it. Dick Cheney talked him into doing it, basically bullied him, and took over the presidency from a foreign policy perspective from that point on. And then when 2006 rolled around, here's what a lot of people don't realize, is Dick Cheney sat Bush down and said, hey, let's go into Iran next. We got the war machine churning. Let's hit Iran while we're at it. Come on. What could hurt? And Bush was hesitant, and the Pentagon stepped in and said, no. We cannot go into Iran. We are not in shape to go into Iran right now. That is a bad idea. Let's not do that. And we didn't do it. They were saying real men go to Tehran. Real men go to Tehran. Real men go to Tehran. That was what was being said in the White House to pressure George W. Bush. I mean, they played Bush like a fiddle. Everyone points back to Bush as the face of the American deep state. He really wasn't. Bush was the figurehead. Post 9/11, and here's the thing. Bush was the perfect guy to unite the country after 9/11. He was. Did a lot of things wrong, his administration, but you couldn't have found, I mean, could you imagine Al Gore trying to rally the country after 9/11? Well, 9/11 was bad, but what do you think it did to the environment? A fucking clown. No. Bush is who we needed. Bush is that good old boy from Texas. He's smart. He's Yale educated, but you feel like you could have a beer with him. That kind of guy. That was Bush. Disagreed with him on a whole lot of shit, but he was the perfect figurehead to come out during 9/11 and unify the country, while Cheney ran everything from behind the scenes. So ever since that Bush administration, that element of the government went from having some say in it to running the show. And this is the first real pushback they've gotten since they've hijacked it. And they're digging their heels into the ground, and they're really pressing now. And that's the problem, is we've got this perpetual tug of war, and we're getting to a point where these agencies and these parts of the government have become an infected limb. And to Trump's credit, whether it's the FBI, whether it's the intelligence agencies, he's tried to treat them with antibiotics in the form of putting the right people in charge, like Kash Patel, like Tulsi Gabbard, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Pete Hegseth, etc. The issue is, what he's finding out is sometimes when you've got an infection in a limb, the infection is spread too far and the antibiotics don't work. When the antibiotics don't work, the only option becomes amputation. And it's looking like the institutional rot in a lot of these agencies runs so deeply that we're going to have no choice but to just get rid of them and start anew at this point. Everybody's fired. The whole thing's defunded. We got to start over. That's the only option at this point, in my opinion, because it's so far gone. A little history lesson for everybody there, in case you guys didn't know it. I don't know. I'm getting tired of it, though. I'm getting tired of coming on here week in and week out and talking about a country that's a billion miles away that runs the show here for whatever fucking reason. That's what's bothering me. You know, Monday night when they announced the ceasefire, I was sitting here and I was like, oh, you know, I'll be happy to eat my words. Like, actually happy. I have no problem admitting when I got something wrong. But I knew better then and still better now than to spike the football that early on, because ceasefires today don't mean what they once did. Ukraine and Russia had a ceasefire not too long ago. In fact, I told Mia privately, I said, I'll be surprised if this ceasefire lasts 24 hours. I don't think it lasted 6. So a lot of y'all went and spiked the football on the 20-yard line. Now, look, if a couple of bombs into some mountains in the Middle East was all it took to stabilize that region, I would happily come on here and say, you know what? I got that one wrong. I shouldn't have been so gung-ho against the bombings. I will reevaluate my opinions on American foreign policy. But now that we've got ceasefires being violated and threats being made and all this conflicting information come out, I don't know what to think of it anymore. I wish I would have been wrong on this. That's the difference between me and everybody else y'all listen to. Number one, I got no problem admitting when I'm wrong. Number two, I usually wish I'm going to be wrong. I hope and pray that I'm going to be wrong about my predictions. If the problem is we've just seen this movie so many fucking times, I know I'm not going to be wrong. You want to hear the other thing? You talk about going into Iraq in 2003. We can't afford a war with Iran, you guys. Think about where America was in 2003, 22 years ago, when we went into Iraq, which was, by the way, the greatest foreign policy blunder of my lifetime. Objectively speaking, you can't debate it. Think about where we were. We had $6 trillion in debt compared to $37 trillion right now. So we have more than 6 times as much national debt. We weren't spread all over the world with all of our chips into all these different baskets, funding all these different conflicts throughout the world against, superpowers like Russia and China. We had a president with a 70% approval rating. Donald Trump's lucky if he goes over 50 in a good week. You had a nation that wasn't divided among race and politics and culture the way it is right now. You had a populace that was relatively united. So we've got a divided populace, over 6 times as much debt, and the most controversial president in the last 100 years, at least. And we're talking about going into war with Iran. I don't know if we survive as a country a war with Iran, not to mention the fact that Iran's a far more formidable opponent than Iraq was. I don't know if we make it out of that the way, I'm not saying we're going to get blown off the map. I don't think America as we see it right now, exists to the degree that it does right now, 20 years from now, if we go into war with Iran. They're saying they could fight us for 2 years. That's before the bombs start dropping. As we know, when you kill one over there, you create 2 new ones. Because you take, like I said a week ago, when you take people that are otherwise moderate and you radicalize them by blowing up their parents, by blowing up their siblings, by blowing up their girlfriends, their wives, their friends, whatever the case may be, you take people that wouldn't have picked up a rifle and turn them into the most violent extremists imaginable. I'm just sick of it. Here's my closing thoughts. On the New York thing. I actually think in the long run, and I don't give a shit about New York. I don't live there. Sorry, New Yorkistan. You guys made your own beds on this one. You see this? I went after the Muslims and the Jews in the same episode. But not really. I'm not going after whole groups of people. I'm going after institutions that threaten this country. I don't mind Jews. I don't mind Muslims. I don't have a problem with either of them. You worship whoever you want. The problem is when you want to use it to oppress me, and when you want to fucking allergies. When you want to play our president like a fiddle and rip us off for my tax money, that's when I'm going to have an issue with it. These are my closing comments on this. I don't think it's all doom and gloom with this guy in New York that won in New Yorkistan. I think in the long run, the rest of the country will see what a disaster an open communist is for the biggest city in the country. You know, what better stage to put it on than the largest city in the country? And I think it's going to play out well for us in the long run, because I think people are going to look at that and go, I don't want anything to do with that. I think you're going to have a whole new group of people. I don't know if they're going to flee to Florida. I think the people that were going to flee to Florida already fled. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a whole bunch of people flee to New Jersey or Virginia or North Carolina. And I think you're going to see those states maybe become a little bit more red. That's my prediction there. Write that one down and tell me what happens with it. Play that one more time, because my predictions. Makes me laugh that moron actually said that on my show.
I'm the Messiah.
What kind of fucking freak comes on the air and says,
I'm the Messiah?
All right, I got to stop drinking this Blood of Tyrants wine. Who is a sponsor of the show? DrinkBloodOfTyrants.com with the promo code BASE. BASED, like the title of the show. You save 10% off your order at the checkout. We'll see you Saturday for the big show. Remember, next week, 4th of July week, we're taking the whole week off. No shows Monday, Wednesday, or Saturday. We're not doing anything. You will not hear from me. And then we'll see you the week after that. But we'll see you this Saturday for the big show. Stay tuned. Cheat on your taxes, not your spouse. And stay based.